Too Close for Podcast, back once again, episode 303 from October 14th, 1982. Guess who's coming forever?
Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Wow.
A lot of stuff going on in this one, a lot of stuff.
Right? So, season 3, episode 3, which is a good one. So now it's 3 o'clock in the morning when the doorbell rings, and it's Iris. And she says she's there to help with the baby. I'll skip to the next morning. Henry and Iris are having an argument, as usual. Then Sarah and Jackie arrive for their morning breakfast, as usual. Henry says Sarah needs to get a job of some sort. And then later that night, they're watching the local news. Sarah is on the news doing the weather. And everyone ends up in the bedroom watching. And Sarah ends up making many mistakes. And that's Act 1 for me. It's pretty fast. I thought it was pretty fast.
There's a lot of stuff going on in this one.
All right, so the next morning at breakfast, Sarah tells everyone about her being on TV.
A double breakfast episode.
Right? And how they offered her a job as the weekend weather girl.
Haven't we been through this before?
Exactly.
But I know we will be through this again.
Henry does not approve because he thinks something bad is going to happen to Sarah when she's getting off work, because they live in a horrible city where horrible things happen to people.
San Francisco.
Mm.
But, Mr. Rush, I'm out on the weekends.
Nah, nothing ever happened to me.
Hey, Har. Monroe compared to Benji next week on...
Yeah, nobody gets that. He's listening to this, but
one person's like, oh,
that one guy is going to give us a comment and be like, yeah, you said hair. Hey, hair. So Henry does not approve of all this, and he ends up getting into an argument with Iris, who does approve of this. She's always the contrarian, and Henry says, if Iris doesn't leave, I'm going to leave. Now we learn that Henry has moved out, and he is living with Monroe now, which is nutty. So Henry helps Monroe into his upper bunk in the bedroom and ends up pushing Monroe out the window. Just then, the doorbell rings. And it's Monroe. Once again, Henry helps him back into his upper bunk bed. Monroe says goodnight to his hamster and Henry. And Henry's kind of freaked out about this whole thing. But then Monroe says, what would you rather do? Go back home with your mother-in-law? And Henry says, no, I'd rather sleep with the hamster. And that was Act 2. Home stretch now. Later that night, Monroe's roommate shows up with a girl. She climbs into Henry's bed while Monroe's roommate, Phil, is taking a shower. Henry, in the meantime, has gotten up to get a glass of water. And when he returns to the bed, he finds the girl in the bed. At that point, Muriel rings the doorbell, and Henry pushes the girl out the window, or lifts her up onto Monroe's bed, so there are no weird misunderstandings, and she ends up going out the window. So Muriel's talking to Henry about how she's upset about this whole thing, and then the girl comes back through the front door, so of course Muriel thinks Henry's having an affair with this girl. Muriel leaves, and Henry follows. The next day, Iris shows up and tells Henry she's going back to Chicago and buying a condo in San Francisco.
But not before some really odd newspaper reading.
All right, that was Act 3.
All right, season 3 off to a very strong start still. You know, last week I gave that one, what did I give that one, a 3? But that was the two-parter of that first episode, which I gave a 5. I'm going to give this one a 5 also, on a scale of 1 to 5. You know, it started slow, but then it takes off. You know, I was leaning towards a 3 at one point, but then they just started cramming so much stuff, and then Monroe's flying out the window, and it's just gold. So we have the interloper of Iris, who, she's not really affecting things too much, a little bit. Guest stars: Monroe's roommate Phil and his girlfriend Sylvia. Now, this show really likes the name Sylvia. If you recall, a few weeks ago, we discovered that Mildred Rafkin's name was also Sylvia. And there was a...
What?
There was a... I know. There was a Sylvia back in, what was it, season 1, that was Muriel's old band friend. And I think there's even another Sylvia somewhere in this series. So I don't know why the writers kept going back to that name, but they did. And I only would have discovered that Phil's girlfriend's name was Sylvia by looking at the end credits. Cosmic Cow appearances are references. Just some references today. First, Iris calls them stick figures, then brilliant drawings when they're in their sarcastic, being nice to each other mode. Henry sweaters, we got 2 of them. Washington and Clark University. Monroe wearing stripes or not? I'd say yes, and then we get to see the pajamas that don't have the backdoor buttons. I guess those buttons were strategically placed on Iris's Act 3 wardrobe.
All right. They were very broad stripes.
Now, who was notably absent? This is kind of a trick question. Well, it's only Monroe during Act 1. Monroe shows up in Act 2 and then again in Act 3. But wow, did they really save his part for the end? You start to think, he's not even going to be in this episode. Objects out the window: Monroe and Sylvia. Now, granted, these are not the same window, but hey, it's a window and things are going out them. We had a one-sided phone conversation, Muriel to Jackie. And I always love how they pick up the phone after like half a ring, Henry pointing, only twice. The Henry pointing has really gone down this season so far. We'll see if that spikes back up. We did get a classic Henry stammer as he chokes on orange juice. Now, the freeze frame transition, it's all over the place. We get the nighttime freeze frame. We get the odd freeze frame of Jackie during Act 1 in between scenes that looks like they cut something out for syndication there. The return of the El Camino drive-by, that's the first of Season 3. We've seen the El Camino drive-by transition, which ruins the that's Monroe's car theory because he is now on a motorcycle. And we also get Monroe's building, which you thought they must have lived on the 5th or 6th floor, but they're either landing on that cat or a trampoline.
I thought they must be living on the first floor. Otherwise, how do they recover so quickly and get back inside the house?
Muriel singing. Well, this was an obscure reference. Band leader Al Croman was mentioned.
He should have married Al Croman.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, yes, Andrew was in this episode.
Once he was, and then there was a couple dolls.
And we get the fake babies. The intro, the good old Monroe in the chair looking shamed. Subversive moment. That's why this whole generation is on drugs, because they didn't have whatever she was talking about. I can't even remember what it's called. Something to get rid of an oral fixation. Obviously an older remedy. Music cues. We got the one-note music cue 3 times that happened. Okay, bizarreness and other odd happenings. There's that momentary pillow fight in the beginning where Henry gets hit in the face by a pillow a couple times. And, of course, all the hijinks at Monroe's place, which really sent it over the top for me. You know, that's the first time we see Monroe's place, and I do believe it is the last time we see Monroe's place as well. Very special episode, or what did we learn? I think it's more of a what did we learn? Well, we learned good night, Spunky. Henry suspected of infidelity again, because that happens over and over again. Occasionally Monroe. Occasionally Muriel. Too many M's in this one. Muriel, Monroe. Occasionally Muriel would be suspected of infidelity as well, but not nearly as often as Henry. Sylvia, that name pops up again. There's 2 kids playing Andrew and 1 dummy. I love that moment where she shakes the head. Say goodbye to Daddy. Yeah, a lot going on in this one. Starts slow and unpromising, but by halfway through Act 2, it's gold. Very strong start to Season 3, which may be one of the better seasons if it keeps up this strong. Looking through the synopsis of the remaining episodes of the season, looks like this could be a very good one. This was still production number 303, so it's not until next week that we skip to production number 305. For some reason, episode 304 was put off just a couple more weeks. Next week, a snip in time. Henry gets a vasectomy next week, and we meet Herb for the first time, who tells Henry it's a good idea to get a vasectomy.
If you like aardvarks, watch this episode.
Yeah.
You can hear my show on Stitcher. Stitcher is radio on demand. Download the free app today. Listen anytime, anywhere.
Create custom playlists. Rate and review my show on Stitcher. And over 4 million car dashboards.
On demand and on the go. No downloading, no syncing, no wasted memory. Stream your favorite podcasts. Don't have Stitcher? Download it free today at Stitcher.com or in the App Store.